Okay, so this kind of came out of nowhere, and what can I say? I think it's pretty terrific. No Man's Sky received a massive update this week. And it looks like the argument seems to be from Hello Games that it's like, okay, we've developed this fantastic new rendering technology for our brand new game that's coming up, but what we've actually done is to kind of inject it into our old game, and it's been transformed in the process. We're looking at a substantially, well, if we go back to the original No Man's Sky and then look at this, it's like it is literally game changing. Alex, what caught your eye here?
Well, a lot of things. I thought the water rendering was pretty cool. So I think a game like this lives and dies upon how interesting and visually interesting the procedural generation is, and I think that's the one area where like the original No Man's Sky, when it launched, wasn't so great visually as a result of that. They had a billion planets around a million suns or something like that. But it's like, did it actually look visually interesting while you were doing those things? And the answer was really hardcore no. And I think one thing is them improving on how they do this all of the procedural generation, how they scatter objects and create rule sets for that. It's improved greatly. But I also think one thing to not forget is just the hardware difference, that they're showcasing the game's base ideas with a lot of iteration, of course, on hardware now that is a lot more powerful than the original PS4, which was, slow CPU, GPU for its time, great, but, memory constrained and things like that. And I think this shows just really just a generational leap in graphical technology that they're using for their new game, which is going to be targeting current gen only. And when they bring it back to their old game in a lot of ways, like the water tech specifically, I don't think that's something that a PS4 would really like and have great frame rates with on a planet. Especially, because these planets can look very different. So I think one thing that really stands out to me in this trailer is just how the generational hardware difference here is making such a big difference.
Wait, I'm confused though, because they do list PS4 here.
Oh, it's going to get the update, but for example, like when they
did they say which visual effects are coming to PS4 or not? Like, I'm actually curious to see what that version ends up looking like.
Well, exactly, yeah. And the Switch version, of course, what's happening there?
Right.
Because, it took them a long time to actually get the Switch version into a good state. And now suddenly they're upping the ante. I think we're going to need to do some coverage on this to see how it actually all plays out. And I have to admit, I did play the game for about an hour yesterday on Xbox Series X because I did put some time into it on Series X in the past. But it was in the past, a long time in the past, to the point where I couldn't really remember what I was doing. So I went back to the beginning of the game, which is essentially a tutorial in how all of the sort of core systems will work. And it's just really solid now. It's just really smooth, really impressive to look at, really slick. And, you've got all of the multiplayer options that we kind of wanted at launch. But, it is one of the biggest redemption stories of all time. And I think what's fantastic about this particular update is that they didn't really need to do it.
No.
All eyes are on the next game, right? But they've turned, what they've invested time-wise into this new game into an update for No Man's Sky. And it's just phenomenal. I just can't quite get my head around this. Is this unprecedented, John? Is this like the biggest redemption story of all time?
I mean, the only thing I can think of comparable is some of the CD Projekt stuff. But I actually think this goes much, much further than that. And like they turned around a difficult situation where the original released in a state where people viewed everything that Sean said about it as basically being a lie. Right. And I'm not I think it's more a case of he was excited about things that they were trying to do and maybe pulled a bit of a Peter Molyneux and tipped his hand a little too far before they could realistically do what he said.
Right.
And they were not able to do it. They've obviously taken that to heart and have spent a decade essentially refining and fixing the game to make it something much bigger and more interesting than what was initially promised, I would say.
Yeah.
The weird thing though about that is that when you go back to all those original promises, you really realize like there was just no way that they could have made that game in 2014.
Right.
Like the game that exists now is something that they could not have made realistically at that time. I say it's impossible for them. Especially when you look at how much time it's taken to get to this point. But either way, I'm also extremely happy to see that it's come along so far. I can't say that I love this type of game personally. I find these types of things a little bit aimless and boring, to be honest, but I see the appeal. But the visual update certainly makes it potentially more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been years since I've sampled this game, so maybe it is. Maybe there's more of a purpose to it now. I'll have to give it a look.
Yeah, I'd like to play the multiplayer iteration to see how that all
that might
plays out.
be fun, actually. Yeah.
Maybe that's some video we can do there, because if you can actually be in the same instance, I mean, we never did like proper cross-platform comparisons of No Man's Sky, because obviously you start the game in any given corner of the galaxy, and the chances of you actually being able to get to the same planet in a cosmos of that scale is actually close to impossible. I'm just looking here whether it's crossplay or not, so we'll have to check that out, because if it is, that would make life a lot easier. Yeah. Any final things to say there, Alex?
I think it's something that we probably should cover in some way. I don't know how possible it is, but is it possible to load up that original version of No Man's Sky from a disc and show it next to the current iteration on like a PS5 or PC? I mean, you would have the issue of, once again, comparisons being so impossible, but you would at least get the sense, like just show a normal desertified planet versus a different desertified planet, and you'd get that idea, I think.
Yeah, maybe there's the disc version on PlayStation 4 or Xbox that could be used. Maybe there's a dare I say a quote unquote cracked version of the original PC release that could be used as a reference point. Or maybe I'll just talk to Hello Games and see whether there's something we can do about that.
Oh, they would probably love that.
Because I really would love to chart the progression of this game. I think it's something to be celebrated. Right? I mean, I just don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it in terms of, not just the redemption story, but just the dedication from the developer to actually making a game everything it can possibly be. And just, how could I say it? I'll just say it again. There's no reason that they needed to put this out there. They've got the new game coming. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. But they did it. They went ahead and did it. And there's been a huge series of what I would describe as massive feats that Hello Games have accomplished with this, and I do honestly think it needs to be celebrated. I think there's so many things that just come to mind. I loved the fact that they went back to the Switch version, optimized it, made it better, introduced their own version of FSR2, a lightweight version of FSR2 for Switch. That's nuts. That's awesome.